Hello, everybody. Eric here, and I'm back to talk about F. Paul Wilson's Secret History of the World. It has been a while. I fell off the train for some reason. Basically, because there are just so many books to read that I own that keep coming out, and so I just kept putting it off. But I'm back, and I don't remember how I was doing these videos, except that the first part, I review the book, and then I talk about how it ties into the secret history, get a little spoilery perhaps, except it has been so long, I'm probably going to forget plenty of stuff when it comes to that. But for this first part, let's get into the book that I read for the Secret History of the World, F. Paul Wilson's Secret History of the World, and that is The God Gene by F. Paul Wilson, obviously. This copy that I have is from Forge. And this is the second book in the Ice trilogy, which is, again, part of the Secret History of the World. So, our main characters are Laura Fanning and Rick Hayden. Hopefully, I have those names correct. Yes, I do. So, we were introduced to these characters in the book Panacea, where Laura, who is a medical examiner, was hired by this super rich dying guy to find this panacea, a cure-all. And Rick Hayden, ex-CIA, who works for this rich guy, is sent to basically protect Laura Fanning. They have a globe-spanning adventure. That's the first book. So now this is just a short time after that. They're back to their lives. Laura is raising her daughter, and she has put in her notice with the medical examiner that she's working for because she wants to get into, I believe, neurobiology. So she's looking for an internship, and I think that would be what it is. And so she's doing this, and there's some other stuff going on that I don't want to mention because spoilers. And she and Rick have become very good friends, maybe more. But neither one wants to say anything to the other one. They both have feelings, but they don't think the other one does, blah, blah, blah. We won't get into all that. Meanwhile, the book actually starts then, as it says, in Africa with a animal smuggler looking for a man with this primate, not a monkey, that's sort of like a lemur or a monkey, but not, with these great blue eyes. And so this guy, I don't know how to pronounce his first name. His last name is Lafitte, like the pirate. He's looking for this guy and this monkey. So then we find out that Rick has a family. We find out that Rick's brother is this famous zoologist who has written a best-selling book, and he is missing. Rick didn't know any of this because he's estranged from his family, and he tells us, we learn that he was adopted, and his brother was also adopted. His sister was also adopted from different places, so there's actually no blood relation. But Rick decides he's going to look into finding his missing brother, and when he goes to visit his mother, she says it has something to do with that monkey, and it's this blue-eyed thing. So everything's sort of tying together. For a nutshell, I'm really getting into this. Basically, Laura and Rick go hunting for Rick's missing brother, and it all has to do with this monkey that's not a monkey. It's a primate with big blue eyes, and there's a animal smuggler involved, and there's some other people involved. And it is a rip-roaring adventure story. There's your I brought it in. I brought that nutshell in. I sealed it up. So, all right. As I was saying, we get a lot more about Rick in this book. He was sort of a cipher in the first book, I think. We got some background about how he ended up where he was in his life, his time in the CIA, why he wasn't in the CIA anymore, why he believes in, essentially, for lack of a better way to put it, the secret history of the world. But now we're learning about his family and his relationships with his family. And so I do think he takes a bigger role in this book. So more of on equal footing with Laura, whereas Laura was really the main character of the first book, I would say. Excuse me. And also, with equal time, I think, is Lafitte and Martin Jukins, who is the guy that's who had this blue-eyed primate and is looking for more of this blue-eyed primate. So our antagonists get, I think, as much page count as our protagonists. And I found this really compelling. And every time I take too long to get back to doing this whole secret history of the world thing, months and months and months will go by before I pick up an F. Paul Wilson and read it. And every time I do, I'm like, why am I not reading these at least once a month? Because once I got going in this, I did not want to put it down. I was reading deep into the night until it's that point where I'm falling asleep. I know I'm gonna miss things if I try to keep reading, so I have to go to bed, and I'll pick it up in the morning. And I did. I started reading this again at 6 o'clock in the morning until I only had like 60 pages to go, so it was easy to pick it up and just finish it first thing in the morning. But that's what I did. First thing this morning was finish this book. So exciting. So 5 out of 5 stars. I'll tell you that right now. I can't remember if I actually posted that on Goodreads yet. I don't think I did. Because I did a lot of stuff this morning after I finished reading this. But I will be giving it 5 out of 5 on Goodreads. It is compelling. I like the characters. I like that Rick's mom is this rich sort of, I don't know that she's old money, but this incredibly rich matriarchal type of character. And yet, if you've ever watched like Law and Order or shows like that, my experience is always Law and Order when they go to these rich New York families and the old dowager is just a raging bitch because, we're old money. We're above this. You can't treat us like this. You can't talk to us like this. Those are the servants. They're not even people. They might not quite go that far. Sometimes they do. But that's sort of the stereotype. And Wilson makes this rich, old New York woman very liberal, which I found incredibly refreshing, except that she is the type that goes too far. But it was a nice switch, I thought. Maybe there are people out there who know super liberal, rich, old white people from New York. And I'm just seeing the negative stereotype on TV since I don't know any rich old white people. But I thought it was an interesting turn that she is this super liberal, Black Lives Matter, defund the police type of character. But again, she does take it too far. There's a point where she wants the songs in My Fair Lady changed because they're misogynistic, and her son tries to explain, well, yes, that's the character arc of It's the Rex Harrison character. I'm not super familiar with My Fair Lady. I mean, I know the story, but I've never seen it. But anyways, her son Rick tries to explain. Well, that's the character arc of his character. He starts this way. He's misogynistic, but he changes throughout. If you change those songs so that they're not misogynistic, then he has no character. She's like, doesn't matter. They're misogynistic. We can't have it. Really fun character. And there's a forensic consultant who Harry Tate, Hari, a female, very fun character. The two people that work for her, a twin boy and girl, male and female, man and woman, however I should put it. They're not children. That's why I changed it after I said boy and girl. They're a little fun. We don't get too much of them, but they're fun. I like Lafitte. I like his character for most of the story. He's a bad guy, but he's not an evil guy, if you know what I mean. Yeah, he's a lawbreaker. He's a modern day pirate-ish, but he's not evil. So a lot of fun, a lot of adventure. It moves at a fast pace. And we start out with two timelines that are only a few weeks apart. I'm just going to take a quick look here. So the very first chapter is then Sunday, May 8th. And then the next chapter is now Tuesday, May 17th. So 9 days, right? Did I say May 8th? Yep. So it's not a big time difference. But then we go back to, let's see. Oh, it's a little while. See, that section's a little longer. Then we go, Tuesday, May 10th. So the then has jumped a couple of days, and then now, Wednesday, May 18th. So we do that for a little while until the time syncs up and everything's happening at the same time. All of the all of the then stuff is Lafitte and Africa and what's going on there. And they're looking for this island that may or may not exist, where these blue-eyed primates may or may not have come from. All of the now stuff is Rick and Laura. And again, eventually the times sync up, and eventually everybody's in the same place. I think that covers it for this part, the review part. So 5 out of 5 stars. Fantastic, rollicking adventure story, well written, great characters. I mean, typical of F. Paul Wilson. Highly recommended. Whether or not you're a fan of The Secret History of the World or any of F. Paul Wilson's other stuff, if you want to read a great adventure, and this reminded me a bit of some of the early James Rollins stuff, maybe a bit of the non-Pendergast Lincoln and Child stuff, right? Lincoln and Child. It's been a while since I've read the Relic or the Pendergast stuff. I had that feeling, that adventurous sort of feeling with a scientific mystery. So I highly recommend it. I don't think you don't have to read the first book, Panacea, but I would say you should. If you're going to read this, read the first book first. But that's me. All right, so that's the review portion. Now we're going to get into the Secret History of the World portion. This is where I'm going to fall apart, because it has been quite a bit of time since I've read anything in the series. And so I'm not going to remember much, I don't think. But first, we're going to jump to Signals, which has my handy-dandy timeline. Again, it's been a while, so if there's anybody new here, what F. Paul Wilson has done with The Secret History of the World is, I'm just going to read this. The preponderance of my work deals with a history of the world that remains undiscovered, unexplored, and unknown to most of humanity. Some of this secret history has been revealed in the Adversary Cycle, some in the Repairman Jack novels, and bits and pieces in other seemingly unconnected works. Taken together, even these millions of words barely scratch the surface of what has been going on behind the scenes, hidden from the workaday world. I've listed them below in chronological order. NB is the end of civilization. Year zero. NB. Year zero is the end of civilization as we know it. Year 0-1 is the year preceding it, etc. So, where we are at is year 0-1, which means we're almost exactly 1 year from the end of the world as we know it. The God Gene takes place in May of year 0-1. Panacea took place in April. So less than a month apart. I think it's only a couple of weeks between the end of Panacea and the beginning of the God Gene. And just to throw it out there, the Fifth Bloodline took place in April. That is a Repairman Jack book. The Fifth Harmonic, which is kind of a standalone, also took place in April. Panacea took place in April. So right there you have 3 that took place in April. And then the God Gene is in May, and the next book, By the Sword, another Repairman Jack, is also in May. So things are really coming to a head. And obviously, this book ties in with Panacea. It is part of the series, the trilogy. And in Panacea, Rick talks about the vast, and I forget exactly how he puts it, the sort of vast intelligence that's basically just messing with humanity. And he calls it, and ice, in the Ice trilogy, comes from something. I don't remember now. And I think it would take too long to look it up, because I don't remember which page, but it does stand for something. I wish I could remember. It's intelligent celestial entities, something like that. And I believe that at the end of this book, again, we're in spoiler territory now, relatively speaking, but at the end of this book, Rick does talk about there being a secret history. He says there's the history that most people know, and he believes there's a history, a secret history, that is what is really going on in the world. And there is mention in this book, pardon me while I take care of a little itch in the corner of my eye. There is mention of some events in this book. A slaughter at a warehouse, I believe it is, and another something that's mentioned that's sort of going on at the same time. And either it's something that I've already read and don't recall, because, again, it's been so long, or these are events that will be mentioned in By the Sword, which takes place in May, in the same month as the God Gene. So perhaps they are By the Sword events. I don't know, but I think it's pretty clear that what is mentioned is going to be something from one of the other books. We learn, again, a little bit more about Rick hopefully I've been calling him Rick, because I keep wanting to call him Jack, because Repairman Jack, but it's not. It's Rick Hayden. Very interesting character, and one of my viewers and commenters, who, again, it's been so long I can't remember, sort of thought I might speculate that Rick might be a persona of Jack. I don't think so, but he is similar, very skilled, not completely off the grid, although a bit. I mean, his name has been changed. He was in the CIA, and essentially, since he's left the CIA, he's been scrubbed from their records for the most part, and he's taken a different name. But he is very skilled like Jack. He's quotes a lot of movies like Jack. He doesn't have the sort of pulp obsession that Jack has. Jack likes a lot of old-timey things, and collects a lot of bric-a-brac. And we haven't seen that with... That's Jack. We haven't seen that with Rick. So I think the two characters can be compared, but I don't think there's any question that they're two completely different characters. So this, how does this tie in more? I don't really know. It does bring up one of the things with the secret history of the world. One, I believe there's the whole, I think they say a few times in here, there's no such thing as a coincidence, which is a theme running through a bunch of these books. But one of the things with the whole secret history of the world is that you have basically these two cosmic universal powers that we would perceive as good, one being good and one being evil. I think they're beyond that. One is so uncaring that they would destroy everything. The other one doesn't specifically care about humanity, but just wants to stop the other entity from destroying everything. And not even because they're destroying it, but because they just want to stop them from doing the thing. It's a lot. But essentially, it's these two things. The adversary, and I forget what they call the good side. But in here, in the God gene, it's in the title. God is brought up. There is religion in this ish. And Rick does talk about the fact that it's not necessarily God. It could just be some cosmic trickster, for lack of a better way to put it. But it's interesting that there's a heavy religious note in this book. And I'm not saying it's the book is religious propaganda. I'm simply saying this is a tool of the narrator, of F. Paul Wilson, for the story, for one of the characters in particular. So I thought that was interesting, that he introduces God as a possible entity versus just these two unknowable cosmic powers that I don't think anyone in any of the other books have tried to identify as God and Satan or whatever. But again, it's been a while since I've read anything, so I could be forgetting a lot of stuff. I'm going to try to do better. But again, I always get excited when I read one, because they're so good, and then I kick myself. Why did I not read more? Let's look at the phone and see. I have a list. And let's go here. So, first of all, I'm going to mark this as done. There we go. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 more things to read in this series. And there are other things in the series that I didn't have when I started, and they take place before where I started or where I was at the time that I got them, and I didn't want to try to slot them in. So this has all been progressing forward. 11 more things. Possibly 12 by this point. I have to check and see if something I have needs to be added to this list. But the next book is By the Sword. As I said, I believe that is a... yep, I can see it right up there. A Repairman Jack book. And I'm really going to try to do these at least once a month. Maybe twice a month if I can. But I have so much to read. And I get distracted very easily. But I think if I'm going to make this coherent... I don't know when I've ever been coherent. I need to read them more often. Anyway, there we go. That is a lot. So, I don't think I do a question at the end of these videos. Again, it's been so long. I don't remember exactly what I do. So, I feel like I'm forgetting something. I'm going to have to go back and watch like the last one I made to see what I'm supposed to be doing in these videos. Let me know if you have any comments, questions, corrections. Please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. All the usual YouTube stuff. If you'd care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is @Ronin5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, and fuzzy animals, is EricSmith5757. I think that's it. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but I don't recall what it could be. So that's all I've got for you. Until next time, read more books.